Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. In this two-part panel-style conversation, Jack Schonely and I bring you a unique conversation featuring a Canadian panel of public safety aviation experts. Together, they share their diverse backgrounds and experiences, shedding light on the vital roles they play within the public safety aviation community. Our discussion revolves around the importance of training and skill development, particularly for tactical flight officers, as they navigate the complexities of their responsibilities during critical incidents. We'll explore how technology is transforming the landscape of law enforcement aviation and discuss the collaborative efforts that enhance operational effectiveness across various aviation platforms. The panel addresses pressing topics, including the impact of the recent Portapique mass shooting, the vital role of ATAK in situational awareness, and the challenges posed by weather conditions in public safety operations. They'll also share the best practices for survival kits designed for extreme weather scenarios and the importance of ongoing education through diverse training environments. Join us as we dive deep into the challenges, experiences, and insights from our panelists, providing you with a comprehensive look at the growth and evolution of public safety aviation in Canada. Thank you to our sponsors, Garmin, Dallas Avionics, and Wysong Enterprises.
Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. The Hangar Z podcast is the first and only podcast dedicated to promoting and exploring the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Join your host, Jon Gray, Jeff Ratkovich, and Jack Schonely.
Still southbound, skidding to a stop. Stand by here. Looks like you're getting ready to bail. Heads up, guys, bailing. Okay, the guy, he's running through the house, jumping the fence, through the shotgun, through something out. Grabbing the shotgun. Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again. He is armed. Stay there. Hold your position.
4 on the stop. You're in custody.
Good advising code 4 on the stop.
Hey, Kyle, you've been patiently waiting, so I'm going to give you
Go ahead, Kyle.
I
cut you off, Kyle.
No, it's all good. That's how these things go. We talked about it just not too long ago, where these things happen everywhere. They happen in these small communities. I just want to bring that back to how important what Curtis is doing. When I heard him in particular, because the RCMP, as far how they do things, like we said, they're not treating TFOs. They don't take that seriously. You can throw anyone in there, with the exception of where Curtis works in BC and the Lower Mainland. And their reputation for what they're doing there is top notch in the country, for sure. So the fact that they brought him in to do that is, but how do you manage those calls? And then hopefully you can bring that to them. Curtis, can we talk about Portapique a bit? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So we had another call with the RCMP out in Portapique, Nova Scotia. Like, this is a tiny little hamlet in the east coast of Canada. And we don't have a lot of mass shootings like you guys do, but we had the worst mass shooting in our country. And that was only, 3-4 years ago, Curtis?
2021.
So we're not talking that long ago. He killed, 27?
I believe there was 19 people killed, several more shot.
Okay.
And of course, he ended up dying as well. But there was, he shot and killed 19 people, including a police officer. And he was dressed as a police officer while he was doing most of these killings. So that's a whole other unanticipated level of complexity there.
So you talk about those big calls. It doesn't get much bigger than that. And I always wondered, and I'm curious to get your take on this, because I'm sure you've looked at it a bit too. If you had some air support on that call, because it went on for hours of this guy moving around in a locked up police vehicle in a uniform, and he even killed one RCMP member who he drove up to them, and she probably thought he was just another cop. So I'm curious what your take would be, Curtis, when looking on that call. What air support maybe could have done for that, because I've always wondered that, because I don't know. I know the bits about the call, but I've never heard a lot of the deeper info on that one.
Yeah, well, obviously, I can't speak to anything that isn't part of public information, part of the Mass Casualty Commission. But there was a full Mass Casualty Commission that delved into everything. Same, just like after Moncton, they had the McNeil report, which is having somebody came in. He was a very high-level retired member, police officer that came in, did a full investigation. What went well, what didn't go well, what can we do better next time, and what are the recommendations? Similar thing happened with Portapique, and they didn't have air support. They had a helicopter. RCMP has a helicopter nearby, down for I believe a 600-hour maintenance. You can't just throw it back together and get it in the air in a couple hours. The event started on a Saturday night. I believe it was around 2,200 hours. It was all over about 14, 15 hours later. He was dressed as a police officer, driving a fully marked police car. He bought himself an old white Ford Taurus and got decals made up so it looked identical to a police car. Bought other stuff on eBay. He set fires, killed people that way, lots of shootings, and he moved. He was on the move. He covered, I believe, from, if you were to pick the farthest points apart, nearly 100 miles. So how do you contain an area that size with multiple roads? And the information as it was coming in, and Jack, you touched on this earlier. What did they look like? Where were they last seen? Where were they going? What's the time delay? He looked like a cop driving a police car last seen this way. Well, everybody is, just on a knife's edge. And it all ended when he had killed a person, carjacked a vehicle, was filling up at a gas station. A couple of ERT members, that's equivalent of SWAT, were at the same gas station filling up, looked at this guy, got this instant eye lock that they knew something was wrong. And he started drawing, they drew, and eliminated the threat right there. But I mean, if it hadn't been for that happenstance at that gas station, who knows how many more people would have been killed. Yeah. But it goes back to a well-prepared member at that gas station with his head in a swivel, knowing what he's looking for and prepared to do what needed to be done. 20 years of training came into that 3-second interaction. Yeah. So what could we have done? Lots of things come up. ATAK. I know that lots of agencies are moving to ATAK now so that we'll know where everybody is all the time. There you go. The fact that ATAK can be incorporated into our mapping systems.
Can it?
Next door in the hangar. Yes. So the hangar next door, heli welders.
Real quick, can you just, for the listeners who don't know what ATAK is, can you just briefly describe it and then go on from there?
I can do my best to describe it. I don't. BC is one of the only places, jurisdictions where we don't have it in wide use. It's just because we're so big, and so they're trying to do the small ones first. But it is and please, somebody else, if they're comfortable with it, jump in. But it's a GPS-based application that you would have on either an Android or an iOS phone or some sort of device, like Wade has it on his iPad. So it sends a signal. It goes to a secure server, and everybody who has access to that server can see where all the members are. In F Division, well, for us, it's F Division, Saskatchewan, where Wade is based. They had a horrific incident a couple of years ago that prompted management there to get all of the RCMP members, this ATAK, so that if Wade were to have it, pull it up and look at everybody in this province, he could literally see where every single RCMP member is, down to within a couple meters, several feet of accuracy. So and it's all GPS based. It's all mostly served over the cellular network. So something like a Churchill or shot over mapping system, you can have an LTE modem in your aircraft. That information comes up into there, it gets integrated into your Churchill overlay. So, and Jack, everybody here who's done this, okay, I got the suspect on view with my Churchill overlay. I can tell you exactly where he is, but I have no idea which member I'm talking to in the ground. Right. Especially when they're running through yards. I'm like, when I do briefings, I say, if I tell you to stop, there could be 20 members in the call. I want all 20 to stop and turn left. Because at least the right one will.
That's right. That's right.
But with ATAK, every little PC, little car that I see driving around will have a little label on it, and I'll be able to say, Bravo 20, stop at your 9 o'clock, 20 yards into the bush, just past that shed. I just saw him go back there. It'll be
it's like
as
Blue
much
Force
of a game changer.
Yeah.
Yes. Blue Force tracking. Yeah. Yep. It'll be as much of a game changer for TFO work as the original Churchill shot over and those type of overlay systems were. I'd rather have a good mapping system than a great camera. Give me a decent camera, but if you give me a good mapping system, that's really
agreed.
That was a game changer.
Valuable.
Wow. Sorry to derail it, but so the recommendations was the adoption of ATAK.
Yeah. So again, because this guy was dressed up as a police officer driving to anybody's eye was a police car, there was a lot of I understand there were several blue on blue shooting incidents during this event. Real cops shooting at other real cops because they didn't know who was who.
Yeah.
And because citizens saying, the suspect just went that way. And so it's dark, because most of this happened at night. So yeah, you had members shooting each other thinking that they were the suspects. And frankly, if I'm looking for a suspect dressed as a police officer and somebody starts shooting at me, I'm probably going to shoot back.
Yes.
Yeah. Luckily, nobody was injured or killed during that. But with ATAK, they would have been able to, behind cover, look at their device, see who's over there, maybe get in the radio call. Hey, Bravo 4, is that you behind that red Ford F-150? Yeah, that's me. Shit. Okay, I'm over here behind this blue Chevy Silverado. Okay, so they know exactly where each other are. So even in remote areas, it's huge. For search and rescue, it's huge. Yeah, it's going to be a game changer for everybody.
Yeah. We not long ago interviewed some folks from the UK that have developed a similar system called Airbox. And so it's neat to see these situational awareness tools come to bear. And, Chris, when it comes to UAVs, it's going to allow some deconfliction services through those as well. So it's really neat to talk about these things and look for these solutions to problems that we've haven't experienced in the past. Those, Curtis, what you're describing, that incident reminds me of the San Diego PD incident with the tank pursuit. Like, you think about these things, and you have to come up with a solution. How do you deal with this? These conversations are the things that spur those brainstorming sessions, those table talk situations, to allow us to use our imagination and come up with solutions to these things. It's really important and really cool that you're able to take that on the road, travel and talk to folks at all of the different training locations you're going to. Something else you talked about that I like, and Jack, I know you experienced this, and Nick Minks does too. You go to these different locations and train, and you're learning as much from the folks that you're training as that you're teaching them.
Every single time.
Every
single class.
Right.
It's unbelievable. I mean, it's one of the things I look forward to the most is saying, well, please come up and talk to me at the breaks or, and share information, because I don't know everything about this topic. And every single class, somebody comes up and tells me something where I just stand there like this with my jaw dropped.
Yeah.
You're kidding me. Oh no, it just happened 2 months ago, and I go, I have never heard somebody hiding in that spot. I have never heard of somebody doing that.
Yeah.
And I think I think about the what ifs more than average. Probably I obsess with it sometimes, but the tank is a great example. Who would ever what if that? I mean, who would ever say, yep, I got to be prepared in case somebody steals a tank in San Diego, but yet there it was, a tank in San Diego.
Yeah.
And luckily there was some really good people in the air and on the ground that handled that, including Todd Jaeger, who videoed. It's his video. I mean, that was not video of from an electronic news gathering aircraft. That was Todd Jaeger. That's a TFO videotaping that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's preparing for the worst, thinking about these things, but then what you just described, Curtis. Oh my God, what a game changer it is, putting it mildly. That is amazing for officer safety, situational awareness, and containment, and capturing and searching and missing child's calls to hurricanes and earthquakes and floods. I mean, there's so much to it.
Real quick, I'll just touch on where I was going with that comment about you guys learning from the folks that you're training. Is in your roles, both of you guys travel across large geographic areas, so you can then take that information you're learning from these students and go teach that to other people in different areas who hadn't heard that, just like you hadn't heard that.
Yeah,
I think Clay refers to it as the training smorgasbord or something like that. You take what you like and leave what you don't, and that allows you as trainers to do that. And I think that's huge. And again, with the podcast, our hope in these conversations like we're having today is to drive these, brainstorming sessions for folks that are listening, and use these scenarios that you're bringing up as the drawing board for these solutions they're going to come up with. So awesome. Thank you, Curtis, for sharing that.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, you're doing some great stuff up there. That's cool.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Yep. So we're an hour and 15 into the podcast, and we've just got through introductions. Congratulations. But no, these conversations are great for that reason. These spur all kinds of natural topics and rabbit holes that we've gone down, and that's exactly what we want.
That's right.
I will kind of transition for a bit we'll probably get one question out from the outline, and that'll be about all we tackle. We talked about a little bit about some of the challenges you guys have in Canada. You talked about, the geographic difference you guys have. These agencies are separated by vast territories. But can you talk about some of the challenges that you guys face and how you've overcome some of those challenges? And Chris, why don't we start with you?
Some of our biggest challenges that we're facing, especially in the Great Lakes region where I am, is the weather for public safety aviation. There's oftentimes that we suffer with all the low clouds and stuff for sometimes weeks, usually in the transition seasons like spring and fall. But yeah, that's probably one of my biggest challenges, and that's where the RPAS come in handy a little bit more. But then they have their challenges too because they can't fly in icing conditions and stuff. But yeah, weather's probably the biggest one. The other one is just in general the aviation culture here in Canada. Lack of airports, lack of locations to sort of support us. But that's biggest challenges for the public safety aviation are essentially those that I find.
Was that a driving force, Chris, to get such a large RPAS program going because of that weather? Was that one of the factors, or was it something else?
Thank you to our sponsor, Wysong Enterprises. Wysong Enterprises offers specialty rotorcraft completion facility, focusing on solutions and installs for customers in various industries, including EMS, law enforcement, energy utility, forestry, tourism, security, and corporate applications across major OEM platforms. Visit us at wysongusa.com.
I don't know if it was rather if that was one of the driving factors of it. I think RPAS is the future, so I think that was the main driving factor. It's the innovation and the technology. But weather, I mean, that's just the pro of the technology, really. Yeah. But sure. I mean, even with the RPAS, I mean, they have their weather issues too, right? Yes. They're not perfect. They do have their limitations. I mean, they have their IP ratings and their limitations in rain and such. But low cloud, obviously, that's where they're very useful on the days when you only have a few hundred feet of a ceiling. And we do have elevation changes in our region alone, where I can be flying in the rotary south of what we have as the moraine, no problem, but I can't get north. I can't get through that. So the RPAS is going to have to deal with those situations. So again, they come back to complementing each other, and that's when you can send the RPAS out. But yeah, weather is probably one of our biggest challenge in our operation.
I think about Southern California, and we're not known for icing conditions generally. Although where I live, we do get those. But Southern California does have a predictable weather pattern that includes low clouds from the coastal marine layer. Just about every morning and every night through a couple months of the year, you can count on those low ceilings coming in. So because of that, I think the drone operations, UAVs, whatever you want to call them, are valuable, not just for those scenarios alone. Jack, I know where you guys were, LAPD at your base. You guys dealt with the clouds all the time.
Yeah, it was the marine layer. It was pretty predictable, though. I like that you added that word because it really was. You knew in June gloom. It's called June gloom in SoCal from. It's just the way it is. So it was pretty predictable, and it didn't catch you by surprise where, you had to worry about it. Everybody knew, it's moving in. You could see it, and you could see it crawling closer to where you were. And then you go, well, it's time to land. It wasn't the dramatic change in weather that many areas throughout North America deal with. It was pretty stable.
Yeah, right. But it did limit our operations because it did.
I mean, you were in a rotorcraft, you were out of business, and a fixed wing, you'd be out of business. You could get above it because it would tend to be low, but you couldn't see anything on the ground. So it really limited air operations in general when it did roll in. But it would roll in and out, even during a shift. It would roll in, roll back, roll in, roll back 4 or 5 times sometimes during a shift. But again, very, very slowly, very predictable, didn't affect your safety all that much as long as you were smart not to get close to it.
Wade, for you, operating fixed wing in your area, talk about the weather considerations you guys have and and how that impacts your operations?
Well, I think the big thing, we're in Canada, right? So we got minus 40 Celsius and minus 40 Fahrenheit meat. And so, bad guys kill people in that temperature. And then in the summertime, we get that kind of plus 35. So we've got that wide range. And so as the seasons change, we certainly have to change our operation, with our survival kits and stuff like that. We teach a survival course here and how to survive those. Because, there's conditions that are easily flyable. It's comfortable for the aircraft. It's comfortable to be inside the aircraft and do your work. But if you've even got to land at an airport that's unmanned and there's no buildings, but it's cold out, you might not survive that.
Yeah.
Right. And so we've had those circumstances here and because we'll take a 3-hour flight to go assist the RCMP in the middle of the night, minus 30 Celsius, to go help them. And so if there's challenges there with weather, that's why we like having 8.5 hours fuel. Right. Yeah. That's why the fixed wing platform in our area, in our environment, works so well, because as long as you're managing fuel, geez, I can fly to California with it. You know what I mean? If I need to. I don't know how many times where we've landed or we've taken off with full tanks and land, 8 hours later with minimums, and we haven't gone anywhere. But then there's other times where, the James Smith Reserve in RCMP land, where I can't remember how many people were killed at that event. And that was about an hour flight from here. And, we took off with full fuel and we operated for 8 hours looking for guy in that area. And no other machine could have done that.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know of any, machines that could do that. And, we land, we fill up, and then we started that full tank again. So, that was a 16-hour day of flying for me. And you can't do it without a machine like what we're doing. And so that's a big benefit. That's a big value. That gets you to those airports with fuel. That gets you to, a safe place to land. And, one of the benefits in Saskatchewan, it was a big war training ground for the Air Force. So they have a lot of, in North America, we're the first kind of place to have air ambulance, a civilian air ambulance. We're the first place to throw firefighters out of aircraft, all in Saskatchewan here. And so aviation is the backbone of Saskatchewan. So there's a lot of airports all over the place here. And so I never, ever feel, as long as the machine is running good, that we don't have a place to land. And in addition to that, we don't have a lot of mountains in our entire province. I bet you the elevation change isn't more than 1,000 feet from the lowest point to the highest point. And it's a farming community. So there's gravel roads everywhere. There's these like 30-mile long runways everywhere. And so, I feel safe in that kind of environment, even if we had mechanical issues. And so for us, it's really about covering ground and having the fuel to do it.
Wade, I'm curious, from somebody whose survival kit was a bottle of water and a Cliff Bar, tell us what's in your survival kit? You just described incredibly dangerous weather. What's in your survival kit in the wintertime?
I think we're actually pretty smart about it. And I think it's, it's layering. So, I teach our people, in terms of clothing, I teach our people to have rain gear. Rain gear is a fantastic windbreaker that can be worn on the outside. And in the winter time, wind is a killer. It will kill you. And so you put that on the outside and you layer up all your other stuff that you have, even your duty gear underneath it. And that's valuable. And if you end up, we teach you how to, we call it a snow coffin. But you pile up snow about the size of a coffin, you dig out the middle of it, and it's the best insulating layer you'll ever find. Yeah. And if you put on your rain gear inside that snow coffin, covered in one of those thermal blankets with some sticks and some snow over top of that, you can survive that minus 40, no problem. But somebody's got to teach you how to do it.
Yes.
And, and one of the things we carry in our survival kit about 5 different ways to start fire in case the other 4 fail. We teach you how to, cook rocks. We cook rocks so that we can warm them up, so that we can roll those suckers back into that snow coffin.
Wow.
And so we do all this. I mean, I remember started teaching that at ALEA, and then the FBI had me down to teach their operators who are operating over the mountainous regions in their country, in your country.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. And, you know, like food is easy because you can pack like one of those military MRE things, and you can survive on that for, you know, quite a good period of time. So that's the simple stuff.
Yes.
We teach how to make fire. We teach how to make water, and we teach how to survive in the elements. And really our survival kits are no bigger. But you know, years ago, guys would actually, it's funny because we had a training day. It was going to be a search and rescue scenario, and guys weren't taking it. They were walking out of the hangar with a windbreaker because the airplane is warm and no mitts, no toque, and they'd go out. And so we planned a training day where we were going to let some people off out in the cold. And so we told them, okay, you guys are flying first. We're going to go do this fake mission. And we sent them out. And when they got the airplane, we said, okay, you guys ready for the mission? Yep. I said, well, you're not going in the airplane. You're going in the van, and we're taking you out. Make sure you got out. No, you can't go back to the hangar and get your tube. Away you go. And so they went, and then the next crew had to go and find them. And they learned real fast that what they needed in their survival kits, we talked about it, we debriefed it. And we taught them how to make those snow coffins. You know, the importance of fire and the importance of water. And, you know, there's a lot of little things too. You know, your body goes, if it's going into hypothermia, it's surprising how much energy your body will expend trying to keep itself warm.
Right.
Right. And so if there's matter in your body, I mean, going number 1 and number 2 is quite important. So it expends a lot of energy trying to keep that poop warm. Yeah. which is silly, but if you got to poop, get it out of there. Yeah. You want your body keeping your liver warm, not your poop. Yeah. You know, and things like that. And you don't want to sweat. And, you know, all these things. And so we've got a really nice, clean presentation teaching our people how to do that. And you know, we know it worked because we ended up doing a surveillance mission about 3 months after that. And one of the girls, they landed at a perfectly good airport with a perfectly good airplane. They couldn't get in because of weather, and so they rerouted to a different airport and called the police station, send us a police car, we need it. And so communication lines got missed. They sat outside in -40 for 4 hours.
Oh,
and it's like, what the hell, right? And it's nobody's injured, airplane's fine. They're just at an unmanned airport. Like it's a runway for an air ambulance and a porta potty. That's all it was. They expected ground units to come like pretty quick, but when they didn't come and they phoned, well, now they had to wait for another unit to get kind of sent out there and stuff like that. And so there's some logistical challenges there. And so from that point forward, from that training day, nobody gets in the airplane without their survival bag.
Yeah, that's great.
But you know, it changed the culture. It changed the culture in our unit to realize that, you know, it's right.
That's something I honestly never really considered. Like,
of course
Jack
not.
said, in Southern California,
how's the weather in Ontario?
We had a survival kit, but like you said, I mean, in all reality, all you need is a bottle of water, a Cliff Bar, or a $20 bill that you can go to the taco shop with.
You know, in Florida, you need a Glock for sure, though. Get those gators.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I think the biggest thing out of all of what Wade said for you Americans is he talked about Celsius, and earlier we talked about kilometers. It's this system called metric that just makes sense.
What is that?
That's why I put it in perspective. -40 Celsius and Fahrenheit meet.
Yeah.
So when I talk -40 Fahrenheit, it's the same as -40 Celsius.
Don't forget, we landed on the moon without metric system. I'm just throwing it out there. You know, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. All right, that was great, Wade. Thank you for sharing that. Because we're John and I can laugh because we're just going. We never had to even consider anything like that, and all of you have to at least consider it, if not practice it and train it and all that. It's just the reality of your environment, you know. That was great.
Yeah, Curtis, for you, you're traveling all over the country in all kinds of different climates. So what does that look like for you?
Well, you know, the first 16 odd years of being a TFO was mostly here in the greater Vancouver area. And so, yeah, like yourself, survival kit is a cell phone and a credit card. Yeah. And, you know, we service of like 20 different police agencies here in Greater Vancouver. We've had times we couldn't get back to the airport, so we have to set down, somewhere else because we're fogged in our home airport. But, it's like weather sucks. You call up the local police agency on the radio. We're going to be landing here in 15 minutes. Can you have somebody pick us up? It's like, great. And our weather's a lot like Seattle. It's beautiful and green here because it rains 9 months of the year, but it's also fairly temperate because we're on the ocean. But with the 145, we're also surrounded by mountains that are 6, 7, 8,000 feet high in virtually every direction where we can go, unless we want to go straight south, which is the border. So we're sort of hemmed in by those mountains. With 145, though, we can fly those missions over the mountains and up into the interior. And yes, so it's brought things that we didn't have to consider before, and we knew and anticipated those things. But yeah, mid-November, we're taking guys 300 miles sort of northeast of here. Some ERT guys on a call. It's 11 o'clock at night on a Saturday, like say in November, so pitch black, but we're on NVGs, twin engine aircraft. And it was clear. That was nice, but it was cold. And so flying them up there, but making sure we have our go bags with us so that if something craps out part way up and we can make a safe landing, that we're all going to be able to at least make it through the night till somebody can come get us the next day or 2 days later or however, because a lot of the places, much like Wade could tell you, in the mountains, there are no roads, right? There might be the odd decommissioned Forest Service road, but the only way we're getting out is by air. And if the weather's that bad, we may be stuck there for a few days. So, it brings different complexities to the game.
Yeah. Kyle, for you, I know your guys' weather is different as well. Can you talk about some of the weather considerations you guys have and how you address those?
Yeah, for sure. It's a lot of the same stuff. We're right next to the Rocky Mountains in Calgary, so the one thing we do get that a lot of others don't is Chinooks in the winter. So it'll be minus 40 degrees Celsius, and then you'll get the winds come over top of the mountains and they warm the air below by compression, and you'll go from minus 40 to like plus 2 or 3 degrees Celsius within a day. But the winds are pretty good, and you get a pretty good pressure change. We get thunderstorms coming through, the odd tornado, just kind of like you would on the prairies. But I would say overall, we're relatively lucky for weather here in Calgary. It's predictable for the most part, much like you guys on the coast with the mountains. That being said, there is a saying, if you don't like the weather, wait 15 minutes. If you don't like the weather, you can wait your 15 minutes. It'll change for you here for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, that's we were talking to Seminole County the other day, and same thing, right? In Florida, every 15 minutes the weather's changing, and they've got extremes over there as well. It's interesting, and again, go back for Jack and I, that's just not something we dealt with very often. Is a lot of consistent weather patterns we had here. So yeah, it's interesting to hear you guys' take, and I could see weather being one of the major challenges you guys face operating in Canada. As far as advantages go, and Kyle, we'll stick with you here. Can you talk about some of the advantages you guys have as Canadians in public safety aviation?
Thanks to our sponsor, Garmin. The Garmin GI 275 digital flight instrument is now approved for MD-500 helicopters, giving operators the ideal upgrade option for replacing obsolete mechanical gauges with reliable solid-state electronics. Get details at garmin.com/GI275heli.
It's an excellent question. I think we have a lot of the same problems that you guys have down in the States. I've always given a lot of credit to American officers in the sense that we still have firearms up here in Canada, but there are very restrictive laws on them. Like, people get firearms, it happens, but the open carry stuff, and if someone has a firearm in a vehicle here in Canada, it needs to be locked up with a trigger lock in it in the back without easy access. I will give nothing but credit to American officers that are walking up with people they know are openly carrying. Credit, 100% credit. I think that'd be scary as an officer to deal with that. And to be fair, we're seeing firearms more and more up here in Canada, which is unfortunate. You guys have already heard it here. We're not perfect. We have had mass shootings and casualty events up here in Canada.
Across the board, are you guys adopting the airborne use of force programs there like we are here?
No, I think we've started looking at them more and more with some events that have happened for sure. We've looked at it, but I would say they're definitely not prevalent across the country in any sense. In fact, probably if anyone's taken the lead on it right now after Portapique and Moncton is the RCMP, and Curtis could probably talk more to that. Our biggest benefit out here is we have so much land, and our population density compared to you guys is not there. Maybe with the exception of Chris around Toronto and the center of the universe there, Chris, where you guys got so many people. You know, we have these big open areas. We have lots of distance to cover, but it's very manageable in the sense that it's not densely populated for the most part. So
I think public safety aviation in Canada is quite young, relatively, right? You know, our partners down in the United States have been doing it for a lot of years. So when it did come up into Canada, of course, the RCMP were the first kind of to do it. And when they started it, they did it right. And then when Kyle and Calgary started doing it, they did it right. And they shared that stuff with everybody on how to do it. So I don't think in Canada, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, there's not a lot of agencies flying 500 feet AGL, you know, just above the power lines looking for bad guys.
No, we try not to, no.
Right?
Yeah.
So that doesn't happen. Things like having your uncle who's a plumber come fly in the aircraft, you know, because the TFO booked sick. That doesn't happen, you know. And I've heard those stories from agencies all over the place. And so I think we're well funded. I think we're publicly well funded. And so I don't think a Canadian agency is looking for a lot of our police cars aren't deckled up like NASCAR. And you see that sometimes, you know, with funding issues and stuff like that. And so I think it's been highly professional. And I think that because the first two agencies, Calgary and the RCMP, that did it right in the beginning, led the way and allowed people like us to say, okay, well, how do we fly? As high as you safely can. Got it. Okay, let's go do that. And so it set us all off on the right foot, I feel. And you don't really realize that until you go talking with everybody around the world on how they do business. And so I think that's a big key. It gave us a really good fresh start.
I think it's interesting you say that way because we talked about it right now. The big one that's coming up is the UAS world. It is the future. Chris has already said it. There's zero doubt. But we're starting to see that a lot of units have got behind on it in Canada, in my perspective. And now we're starting to see it spark up all over the place where those little 2 or 3 man detachments, well, here's your UAV, go to town. And us training it properly and making sure we're all on the same page that we're not going to make bad case law, bad privacy law, or we have accidents that are going to get our regulatory body, Transport Canada, really restricting us on what we can and can't do. This is the time to figure that out.
Yeah, the regulatory side in the U.S. has been changing nonstop since they basically began. So it's interesting to see you guys talk about that and how that's going to affect you guys. What are some of the considerations you guys are looking at when it comes to UAV safety and how you integrate that into the manned aviation programs?
I guess I can speak a little bit to that. It's just understanding. Number one is altitudes. With the metric system, a lot of our UAV pilots use meters when doing altitude or communicating altitudes. They use meters, whereas the traditional aviation is feet, right? So there is that sort of understanding that we need to, like safety-wise, we need to understand that we need to be speaking the same language. And I believe RCMP went down that road a few years back, and I think that was one of the contributing factors to one of their accidents back in the past. But yeah, it's just understanding the terminologies and the different ways of speaking and communicating between traditional aviation and UAV aviation. We have a very good relationship with Transport Canada on the regulatory side of things, and their goal is not to restrict public safety aviation, but to help it advance and move forward, which is good. So they are on our side. So we do have that advantage in the UAS, RPAS world. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, with the safety things with the RPAS, I mean, they are flying higher and 400 feet. You would think there wouldn't be much traffic below that, but obviously near airports, and just understanding where you are and where you're operating. You got to be careful and be cognizant of those altitudes and stuff. police aviation wise, like Wade said, 1,000 feet is typically the lowest we'll fly. We don't usually try to get down much lower than that. And if we do, it's 500 feet tops, like bottom end. Trying to convince some rotary pilots of that, it's difficult. They always like to fly a little bit lower, but keeping them above that 500-foot mark, and then the buffer of that 100 feet from the RPAS that's limited to 400 feet is key in that as well.
Yeah. That seems to be the kind of the standard, right? 400 feet AGL and below is kind of drone territory, and above that's the manned operations. So see that standard kind of taking place across the board. Jack, in your travels, have you heard any interesting safety tidbits as it comes to UAV that you'd like to share?
With the UAS guys that I've had contact with, nothing has really come up where it was like, wow, that was a close call. Or, I mean, they've had incidents and stuff with weather and wind and things like that, but not as far as other aircraft or anything like that. And I think it's because the people I've been around, that they are, I mean, I'm not a UAS operator. When I go and have contact with those folks, I'm teaching them about what Chris was talking about earlier, about communication and tactics and search and that stuff. And I tell them that right up front. I've got a lot of experience in that. I don't have any experience in operating it. But what I've seen is that they're very professional. I mean, it's very professional, and they follow the rules, and they're very, very aware of the rules, and they verbalize them. I mean, talking about altitudes or wind. I mean, I was just in North Dakota with a bunch of drone and canine people, and we were doing scenarios for canine searches. And the canines were there, but it was all about the drone operators. And it was windy. It's North Dakota. I mean, it's real close to the Canadian border where I was at. And they were dealing with wind issues. And they all knew their limitations. I was just impressed overall with the professionalism, the knowledge of the rules. And I think that's good. That's really good. We were talking about it earlier, how I think Wade said it, how, RCMP started and then Calgary follows and they're doing it right. Well, I think that's what most that I've seen UAS people are doing. They're doing it right. I'm sure there's units out there that aren't doing it probably the correct way, but the ones I've had contact with have impressed me in a big way.
Yeah. Well, having Chris, like in your situation where you've got all this knowledge and experience from the man side, now you're relaying that on the UAV side or the US side. That's huge. I really encourage people to follow that recipe, because I think there's a lot to be gained from having someone with your experience over that kind of program. So well done there.
John.
Yep.
Just quickly here, it comes to my mind. You come back to, we're looking at that training here in October here in Calgary. So actually, it's convenient I got Chris and Curtis here, because I've been they're looking at putting together some case studies on those two incidences as part of our presentations in October. And I think the other piece for us is the first day we're going to be splitting the day between a few different agencies, between Edmonton, Saskatoon, Calgary, and Curtis in the Lower Mainland. We're all going to do some case studies on the man side. But that first day, we're going to have another group split where we're doing a bunch of UAS training. And then the second day, we're going to bring everyone together. And it's all these topics apply, especially the safety side, on the safety stand too. I think it is so important for us on the man side. The UAS side is part of the family. We got to bring them into this training. You are equally part to be there. You have an equal part of that game, and we want you there at that training. So I'm going to be a little shameless, but the ask on that is, if you are listening to this, other people or agencies or UAS, and spread the word. We want you to come to these training. AppsCon now has the unmanned side as well. We want that being incorporated more and more, because it only makes us all more successful when we come together, I think.
Yeah. I love that Apps has included that in the conference. And I think the next step is to bring all those courses together. Currently at the conference, you've got the UAS training, and the man training programs, and they kind of stand alone. I'd like to see those at some point come together where you have everyone sitting kind of in the same classes. And while that can happen for all the classes, I think there's a lot that can, like the TFO course that's taught every year. That's one that where you could see all these folks benefiting from that information in the same way, regardless of whether it's UAS or manned programs. Yep. But like you said, I do think it's really important for these folks, if you're on the UAS side, to attend these fly-in trainings, these stand-to trainings that APSA is putting on. Anytime you get a chance to network with the manned programs, do that, because like Kyle said, we want you there. And at the end of the day, we all know that those programs aren't going anywhere, and we're only going to be learning to work with each other more. So I feel like the quicker we can come to terms with that and embrace these different programs, the better off we'll all be. We shouldn't be sitting in different rooms talking about the same thing. We should be sitting in the same room discussing the same lessons learned type scenarios. So that's just my 2 cents there, Kyle, on that. But I do like that you guys are encouraging the UAS operators to attend your training. Looking at the time, we got through 2 questions on the outline. Although we did touch on quite a bit else that was on there, just in an organic way, which is really cool. But I want to kind of give everyone an opportunity, if you have any closing thoughts before we close this out. And Wade, we'll start with you, and then we'll go around the room as you guys are on my screen.
Thanks to our sponsor, Dallas Avionics, who provides innovative products to law enforcement, the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, military, air medical, search and rescue, and special missions operations. Dallas Avionics distributes OEM equipment, including communications equipment, digital audio systems, PA systems, flight tracking, and other mission-critical devices. Visit DallasAvionics.com for more details.
Closing thoughts. I think that I'll speak for myself, but I mean, there's 2 levels of training, I think, here, and I'm really excited to bring my people. We've given our in-house training, so I'll call it the first level. I'm really excited to bring those people to Calgary to learn from other people how to take their TFO career or their air sport career to the next level, right? Not hear it from dad, but hear it from some other coach, that can help them communicate better, right? So hear what the RSMP are doing, hear what Calgary is doing, hear how they utilized it. I'm really excited for that, and I think that can only happen in person.
Yeah, it reminds me of Brian Smith. He talked about in his safety course, and I'm gonna mess up exactly what he said. So I'm sorry, Brian, but this is what I remember. He talks about the village idiot concept. He goes, when I go back to my agency at home and I tell everyone at my unit a certain thing, they just look at me as another village idiot. I'm not this nationally recognized leader when it comes to safety. But when those same people hear someone else say that same thing, it drives the point home. Yeah. So to what you're saying, I think that's valuable.
Agencies from all over North America Portland called, how do we make our unit better? I tell them, and they change their entire operation in the city of Portland because of what Wade says. But my own department won't listen to me. So I'm excited for other people to, preach the gospel according to APSA and according to safety and according to Kyle and Curtis and Chris. I'm excited for them to hear that because it's from somebody else, and they'll treat it as gospel.
Yeah, absolutely. Kyle, for you, first off, thanks for reaching out and for putting this together. This has been an awesome conversation. But as you've kind of processed what we talked about, any closing thoughts you have?
I'm Chris, Wade, Curtis, Jack, John, thanks for being here today. It's getting to talk to you guys is outstanding. Like you say, my big push here is I'm going to have to talk about our event in October again a little bit, in that we haven't had an in-person event in Canada since 2017. And getting us all together is so important. But 2 things, the events don't happen if we don't get people showing up. So please spread the word. And if you're not from Canada, we want you there. We want other people's opinions. Fill that room with as many people as we can. And that is the best thing we can do. The other piece that is, these events don't happen without sponsorship. And we've already got a bunch of sponsors that have come on board. But if you are in that level that you want to sponsor this event and come on up, that's a huge part of our industry as well, as I've learned, is when we get these companies that are helping sponsor these events like AppsCon, and they're showing up and we get to talk with these vendors about that technology and they help us to be able to network and come together and chat with them as well. We can't do this without you, and the vendors are such a vital piece of this. So if you're interested in coming up to Calgary, Ben A. Osborne at APSA has been coordinating our vendors, but we'd love to have you there as well. Thanks, John.
Yeah, for the folks that are coming to Calgary, what are the hot spots in Calgary? What can people expect to do out there?
We got you stay a couple days. We got the Rocky Mountains. We got Banff. With Calgary Tower, we're the home of the Stampede. Mind you, that's in the summer. But Alberta beef is probably a little bit like Texas. We're famous, so we definitely come here and get a good steak. There's zero doubt about that. So, and we're looking at organizing some events at our union building in between to help bring guys together in those evenings in between and stuff. I think that part is so vital. I think that the big thing with Calgary is Canadians have a reputation for being a friendly bunch, and I'd like to hope that's true. I think we genuinely want people to come. We like meeting new people. I know I certainly do. So I think you'll find a friendly atmosphere if you come up here as well.
Right on. Very cool.
And 7% beer.
That doesn't hurt at all.
Yeah.
John's getting his airline tickets right now.
Yeah, beer and steak, boys. Beer and steak. Yeah.
That's a good recipe right there. Curtis, for you, thank you for joining and for going over those incidents. I know that those are difficult to talk about oftentimes, and equally as difficult to kind of navigate some of the regulations that each agency has when it comes to talking about some of those details. So thank you for walking that tightrope for us. But any closing thoughts as we exit this conversation?
Training. A lot of agencies don't seem to have a problem getting, multi-million-dollar aircraft, $1 million mission equipment, but you put in a $20,000 training request to send your people somewhere, and it's like, oh my God, how can we got no budget for that. You can do this job, as Jack was saying, with a paper map book, a $5 paper map book, your eyeballs out the window, and a competent pilot. But technology makes it better. But that training, we had a fully equipped, mission-equipped aircraft in Moncton, didn't have the people. Similar sorts of things elsewhere. That's what I've been doing for the last 6 months. We have these mission-equipped aircraft, but no people to run them. And it's not, you got a camera. Here's a camera system course. I can teach it. I've heard Kyle say this before. I could teach someone how to run that camera in 15 minutes. It goes left, right, up, down, zooms in, zooms out. Pretty much all you need to know for daytime ops. It's the everything else that people need. And I think I can speak for RCMP Services. Part of me developing this course, this TFO training course, we're interested in training other agencies as well who are trying to get things going. So, and we wouldn't charge for that training, as I understand it. They're looking at, if you want to come on one of our courses, take a spot, we'll take your people. You'd have to pay their expenses and everything to be out there, but we're not going to charge you for our time, our expertise, and everything else. And I think the extension of that, we'd be happy to come to you as well. You cover our travel costs, but my salary is paid for. We've not been great at that in the last several years, but I think they're really understanding how important it is. We don't want to have another incident where we've said, well, we had the equipment, but we didn't have anybody capable of doing the job.
Yeah. And like you said, that's something that is being dealt with worldwide. And that comes down to the recruitment retention issues that law enforcement's having. There's agencies that are slotted aviation-wise for like 10 folks, and they're operating with 3. And they're having to downsize everything as a result of that. And that's just a unfortunate, consequence of the political and social environment that we're operating in today. So coming up with solutions for that is important. Chris, for you, again, thank you for joining us and for sharing your knowledge on both the fixed or the drone side and the manned side. Any closing thoughts as we walk out?
Well, yeah, thanks again, Kyle, for setting this up, and John and Jack for joining us today. Public safety aviation in Canada is it's a tight knit family. I mean, we know like from east to west coast. I mean, we're really close with each other, which is great. We share a lot of information on a regular basis. We know, we can pick up the phone and call each other any time of the day, first name basis. That's what's great about the public safety aviation in Canada. With the UAV side of the house coming in it's just going to get bigger. And I know it's no secret Ontario's buying more helicopters. So public safety aviation in Canada is growing, and it's becoming big. And Calgary being, one of the pioneers in Canada for public safety aviation, I mean, there's going to be a lot of leaning on them and the rest of the people here today in building these TFO programs and helping these new agencies grow in Canada. So I think it's great. And again, thanks everybody for today. And it's been great.
Yeah, the drone operator population is going to explode, and has already in the U.S. and elsewhere. Yeah. And Jack, you can attest to that as you see in your travels. So our community is going to get exponentially larger, which is exciting. Because I think the more people that have some buy-in and input on what we're doing is great. So I look forward to that. You just said Ontario is buying lots of helicopters, and it's funny because I work for Ontario, California, and I don't work for Ontario, California anymore. Now I work for MHM Publishing, which is out of Ontario, Canada. So I can't seem to get away from Ontario for some reason. But
That's
I'm very
great.
thankful. It's just kind of funny. But Jack, thank you again for joining the conversation. You've always got a ton of unique insight, and I appreciate you joining us.
Oh, I'm happy to.
Yeah.
I was really honored to be here with the four of you today. The five of you, I'm always honored to be around John. But great to have the four of you from Canada with us and giving us a unique perspective and great conversation. I learned a lot. And I will say this, I do feel very guilty after listening to Wade talk about the survival kit of how I ended up in Oakland one time on a surveillance with nothing. I had a wallet and how we felt, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And we're at an airport staying at the Hilton, and we were like, we're freaking out because we don't have toothbrushes and we don't have a charger for our phones, and then listening to Wade talk, it's like, what an idiot. Sean Malachi and I, we had a great time on that trip. We were surveilling for 4 days, but it wasn't in minus 40 Celsius. All right. So I'll just leave it at that.
And you weren't in a snow coffin? No,
there was no snow coffin. I would have had to cuddle with Sean in there. Wow. That would have been interesting, but he would have loved that. But thanks, guys. It was really educational. And I know that John right now is looking at airfares to Calgary for October. And that would be great.
You have to get 7% beer.
I'm just saying, John, I'm a little closer than you are, but we could do it. We could do it. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, guys, it honestly has been a pleasure. Thanks for joining us, and look forward to catching you soon. See ya.
All right. Thank you so much.
Right on, guys.
Cheers, everybody.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Hangar Z podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories that promote the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Lastly, stand by for a message after a word from our sponsors. Cheers.
Thanks to our sponsor, Garmin. The Garmin GI-275 digital flight instrument is now approved for MD-500 helicopters, giving operators the ideal upgrade option for replacing obsolete mechanical gauges with reliable solid-state electronics. Get details at garmin.com/GI-275heli. Thanks to our sponsor, Dallas Avionics, who provides innovative products to law enforcement, the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, military, air medical, search and rescue, and special missions operations. Dallas Avionics distributes OEM equipment, including communications equipment, digital audio systems, PA systems, flight tracking, and other mission-critical devices. Visit DallasAvionics.com for more details. Thank you to our sponsor, Wysong Enterprises. Wysong Enterprises offers specialty rotorcraft completion facility, focusing on solutions and installs for customers in various industries, including EMS, law enforcement, energy utility, forestry, tourism, security, and corporate applications across major OEM platforms. Visit us at wysongusa.com.
Thank you for joining us for this enlightening two-part series of the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicast. We hope our engaging discussion with this panel of Canadian public safety aviation experts has provided you with valuable insights into the critical roles they play and the skills necessary for success in this dynamic field. As we've explored, the emphasis on training and skill development for TFOs is paramount. especially as they tackle the complexities of their responsibilities in high-pressure situations. The integration of technology and collaboration across various aviation platforms is transforming law enforcement operations and enhancing overall effectiveness in public safety. The experiences shared by our guests on pressing issues such as situational awareness following the Portapique mass shootings, weather challenges, and the importance of survival kits remind us of the ever-evolving landscape of public safety aviation. We also appreciate the emphasis on continuous education and training, which is essential for adapting to new challenges and improving effectiveness and efficiency in our complex mission sets. As we conclude this episode, we encourage our listeners to implement the knowledge gained today in their own operations and to continue engaging with the community to foster growth and improvement within public safety aviation. Cheers.
Time to close up the hangar. Thanks for joining us on the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts.